Привет! Я, комисар Бинко, представлям вам.
The Commissar salutes you. Today's topic is Pakistan versus India. These two neighbors have a long history of hostilities, so how would a new war go? Air forces would get scrambled quickly by both sides, as well as what limited precision strike cruise missiles they both have. Pakistan would quickly find itself in a problem. The depth of its territory is simply not that great compared to India's. What that means is that all of Pakistani air bases could be attacked by India, but only part of Indian bases could be attacked by Pakistan. That proximity of Pakistani air bases also means missile attacks would be quite dangerous. Over half of their bases and airports are 200 kilometers away from India's border. Indian missiles would quickly start harassing those airfields. Even if they're not precise enough to close them down, Pakistani sortie rates would suffer. Pakistan would try to do the same, but it has less missiles and distances to Indian targets are much greater, not to mention the greater number of targets to hit. India also enjoys limited anti-ballistic missile systems, though their numbers and maturity would mean little real-world difference. India would also have the upper hand when it comes to intelligence gathering. It would be able to glimpse Pakistani air operations and army movements sporadically with its satellites, as well as track near-border movements with their large fleet of UAVs. With superiority of Indian air forces, Pakistanis would be hard-pressed to exploit what little recon assets they have. Therefore, Pakistan would most likely take a defensive stance. It does have a rough parity when it comes to aerial early warning and A-link platforms, which would help it organize its defenses and intercept the incursions in a timely fashion. Pakistani air defenses are not very numerous and certainly fall behind India's. They do have some fairly modern systems, so Indian attacks would slowly be losing some planes, as Indian Air Force doesn't have many standoff weapons. Still, quality and quantity edge that Indian fighter fleet enjoys over Pakistan would mean Pakistani Air Force would fare pretty badly. With the harassed air bases in mind, most of their forces might get neutralized within a month, and they would be relegated to occasional interceptions from a few distant air bases. After achieving air superiority, India could switch some of its multi-role planes to ground attack operations. Coupled with dedicated Striker planes, a fleet of over 300 strike planes would benefit India greatly in the ground war to come. Outcome of naval conflict would be dictated by the large difference in two fleets. Indian aircraft carrier and much larger surface and submarine fleet would mean Pakistanis would cling to their shores. They would try and use their air force to help with anti-shipping attacks, but that option would quickly start disappearing as Pakistani air forces get neutralized. Pakistan also uses several coastal batteries of modern anti-ship missiles, but again, all that would do is keep Indian fleet at some distance. India also has an edge in submarines, including a nuclear attack sub, as well as aerial anti-submarine assets, which it could exploit once the air superiority is established. At the same time, Pakistani assets could not hunt Indian submarines as easily due to Indian fighter plane escorts. Even the coastal anti-ship batteries would eventually get hunted down, so within a few months, India could try to perform some amphibious landings. Its assault fleet is decent but not very large. As usual, whatever troops are landed by sea or air in the first wave would have to get supplied, so further waves would put less and less additional troops on the beach. Air mobility in general is an area where India is stronger than Pakistan. While Pakistan could use its fleet to move some of its troops around on the side of the front line, India could perform incursions over the front line or help the amphibious assault. India could count on its airborne regiment paratroopers and regular army getting ferried by helicopters. If India does perform an amphibious landing, it would probably be done somewhere here, where it is far away from Pakistani main forces, yet close enough so a new front line could be opened within days. Pakistan is sparsely populated west of Karachi, so keeping a large force to guard all that coastline would be very labor-intensive for its army. Pakistanis would have to dedicate some of their troops, at least the paramilitary, to guard their shores. And every soldier used for that mission means there are less soldiers available to fight off the Indian ground offensive. The ground war would start immediately, alongside the air war, but it would take weeks and months until India organizes itself and a proper push inside Pakistan takes place. Before that, Pakistan could try and push into India where there are little defenses, like through the desert in Rajasthan. But that would be a pointless move, as those forces would get worn out traveling through desert and would eventually get cut off and killed. The desert does cut both ways, so Pakistan would enjoy quite a bit of protection there. The vast lakes, wetlands and mudflats to the south of the desert would be even harder to cross for a large motorized formation. And if India manages that, a push towards Karachi would be met by Indus River Delta area with countless little channels. Indian offensive there would have to suffer huge casualties. Easiest approach for India would be through the flat Punjab region. That area might see some of the biggest tank battles since World War II. Kashmir is likely to be a pretty stagnant part of the front line, as the mountains there are simply too much for motorized formations to handle, and lightly supplied troops on foot wouldn't be able to break Pakistani defenses. Pakistan will have to tie a large part of its forces there, as its capital Islamabad is quite close. Nominally, Pakistan's army trails behind India's, which is over twice as numerous. Pakistan attacking India would be suicidal. But equally so, due to all the geographical features mentioned, India would find very hard to push into Pakistan. With such a fairly narrow piece of flat land with road infrastructure available to India, it would have to press through other directions as well to put enough pressure on Pakistan. The mentioned sea and air assault would be a must, as well as a push through the desert with all its dangers. And dangers would be numerous. Without roads, crossing so much desert territory would mean lots of equipment breaking down. It would very much strain the supply lines, as trucks would be hard-pressed to bring in food, oil and other supplies. Without trees or houses to hide the forces in the desert, Indian formations reaching the Pakistani defenders would be in quite a delicate position. While Indian artillery is more numerous, one area where Pakistan has a slight edge is attack helicopters, but they would be of little use due to their small numbers and Indian air defenses. Still, with pressure on several sides, Pakistani defenses would eventually crumble. Punjab Flat region would get wider as India pushes into Pakistan. Since Pakistan's border region is very densely populated, that push would be extremely slow and costly for India. But on the other hand, India has many more resources and a larger population pool. While much of their border is not easy to traverse, it is still a 2,000-kilometer long border. Pakistan trails India in both numbers and technology, so it would slowly lose alongside the front, but it would be a laborious process for India. Whether it takes a year or 3 years, Pakistan would lose a decent chunk of its territory, even if India lost a few times more soldiers in the process. Whether nuclear weapons would eventually in the end get used is a different question. That is one area where Pakistan does have parity with India. Its arsenal is tailor-made against India, while Indian arsenal is partly geared against China. Pakistan relies on short-range tactical nukes quite a bit, made to attack Indian offensive formations. In such an exchange, Indian army might get beaten as hard as Pakistani army, though the response would mean most of Pakistani cities would get attacked as well. A silver lining for India in that nuclear exchange would be southeastern parts of India being mostly free of damage, as they are too far away for most or all of Pakistani missiles. India also enjoys much less targets to hit, while Pakistani arsenal does need to hit many more targets in India. So, not counting the possible Pyrrhic Indian victory in a nuclear exchange, end result of the whole war would still be clear: slow, painful and costly Indian victory. As usual, feel free to subscribe, and if you really like my videos, you can support me via the above link through the Patreon crowdfunding website. And if you'd like to see a specific pair to be made into a video, hop over to my website using the link above, and there you can submit pairs you'd like to see as well as vote in my monthly poll, deciding which videos will be made. And remember, Binkov may talk about hypothetical wars, but only real peace can bring us all together.